one of the characteristics of a Catholic who's really walking out the grace, the immense gift given to them in baptism, is that they become to develop a sacramental point of view. Um, the reason being is that the church is an extension of Jesus. Well, a succinct way of defining the church is it's an extension of Jesus through space and time by means of the sacraments. That's just very pithy, and it's of old duration, that being what the church is. And that brings us into the idea of mystagogy. We covered that in previous shows, and you can type that word in and you'll see some of this in there. But refreshing our minds as to what that is, it comes from the Greek word mystes, meaning the one who has been initiated, and agogos, meaning leader. So that part refers to the liturgical catechesis intended to initiate a catechumen into the mystery of Christ. So in a more specific sense, mystagogy is that period of catechesis immediately following an adult's reception of baptism. That's Catechism 1075. But I track with Han on this, and I will say we are all catechumens. We are all on the road to Christ, and we all have need of deeper education in this, in the matter of Jesus Christ. And it's not, you need that. So we started, it could say a little bit like head knowledge, right? The creeds and development of theology, or the sacraments, that sort of thing. But the head knowledge is to lead into the heart knowledge. They're not at odds. They interpenetrate one to the other so that we live an authentic Christian life. And the sacraments are essential to this walk because of Christ. It was not some imposition from the Constantine era. Yes, the sacraments are initiation. They're not one and done. The sacraments are not one and done. So baptism and indelible, so it's like we don't repeat it. That is true, we don't. But that's what confession and the walking out and that return to that moment. So in our memory, even if we were children when we were baptized, we can go back to that moment when we were gifted with that, and let that reflection of opportunity become more, I guess, more real. At least as I've aged, my appreciation, my gratitude, my absolute awareness that my faith is a direct result from a whole bunch of people prior to me making sacrifices, teaching, that spend a good bit of eternity thanking all these people. Many of them I won't even have met in my own life, right?
Yeah, I think that there is a union. I mean, obviously, Calvary is once, right? But God is there. There are certain elements of us that are eternal, or presence. They're not something that can be. Although God has chosen for man to live inside of time, right? So that we have an opportunity to grow in virtue, right? And to learn through hindsight, right? He's given us that grace. There are certain elements of sacraments, those which are indelible, that are outside of time, and that we always have a perfect unity with. in the same way that Calvary, right? Calvary does not have to be repeated every year, because every time that we enter into the mystery of Calvary, the only mystery that we can enter into is that one time. But that one time is ever present. And it's the same thing with our baptism. That baptism is ever present. And, that is the beauty, before, when you were talking about making the sign of the cross in Latin, that is an immediate, I don't know, like in the same way that you can you immediately bring yourself back to the reality of your baptism. It's a way that somehow the person in time can sort of touch his eternal self, right? His soul can be joined together with that simple gesture of the sign of the cross. And it's really a great mercy when we think about that you don't have to keep rebaptizing yourself. It is sufficient because the baptism was conferred on your body, but the grace was received into the soul. And, we know that our bodies make mistakes, and we make intellectual mistakes. We sin and we separate ourselves from this goodness. And so God in his mercy has given us confession, which is not once and done, right? But the baptism, it's you don't get rebaptized every time you sin. No, there's a different means that our Lord has seen fit to that, because it's like Calvary. It's there. It's a permanent mark.
That's correct. That's correct.
And sort of like with priesthood too, or with the confirmation. We think of these, and it's such a comfort. I don't know. It's such a beautiful way of recognizing the duality within the human person.
That's right. The sacraments of initiation are not one and done. Baptism, confirmation, and Holy Eucharist. Yes, that would be part of the initiation. And baptism and confirmation are just once, along with priesthood would be just once. However, so they're not one and done. They're meant to grow with the person, and frequent studies of them is essential. For example, some people today still look on confirmation as the sacrament of maturity. But this sacrament, and my friends, this is from Loyola Press. I am not reading from some rad trad here. This is Loyola. This is what they're saying. All right. Some people still today look on confirmation as the sacrament of maturity, but this sacrament does not imply the candidate is completely mature in the faith, nor does the signing with chrism instantaneously produce maturity in the candidate. Conversion to Christ is a gradual process to which confirmation gives added strength. Through it, the confirmed person is strengthened for this lifelong journey. Continuing on, confirmation as intricately related to baptism and Eucharist, and together these sacraments constitute a process by which the Spirit brings the believer to full union with the community, the church. That'd be another sacramental point of view, is that it's ecclesial. So we have sacramental. We'll have Christological, Trinitarian, ecclesial. Confirmation does not complete baptism in the sense that baptism left something incomplete. Rather, the two sacraments are united in the initiation process. And finishing off, confirmation is also associated with the Eucharist, where the people of God unite to celebrate the death and resurrection of Christ. That's why Sarah was talking about Calvary. When confirmation preceded First Communion, and gratefully, our last one had this ordering, and it makes better sense to my mind. It is easily seen as a preparation to full celebration with community. In 1910, when Pius X made it possible for 7-year-old children to receive communion, confirmation became the last sacrament of initiation to be celebrated. So that's how it started to change. Now, confirmation's role of leading to the Eucharist must be emphasized in ways other than chronological, and that's a hard one.
It
You
is.
know, we're so tied to chronological. That's a toughie
Yeah.
in so many ways. The church accomplishes this through catechesis, the words of the rite, and celebrating confirmation within Mass.
Yeah, I think that there is an element where, if we in the Latin Rite Church really had better understanding of all of the rites within the church, we would know intuitively that confirmation does not confirm maturity, right? I mean it has never been intended to be a graduation ceremony. It has never been intended to mark you as a quote unquote adult within the church. Um, and I think that in some ways we actually in the Latin Rite Church now have unfortunately a very, very skewed understanding of confirmation, that we little understand it because those ideas, which obviously have expressed as being erroneous, have become the reason why this needs to be articulated now as being erroneous is because they have been accepted as true, right?
That's right.
And it's somewhat, I mean, it's problematic to the ecclesial nature of initiation into community. There has been a misunderstanding that for a person to be an active part, quote unquote, in the life or the body of the church, that they have to be mature, or they have to be that there's something that is required of them other than an assent of the will, or and even in the instance of the child's, it does not have to be an informed assent of the will, right? It simply has to be that in the Latin Rite, to be of the age of reason and to say that you understand that the Holy Spirit is being given to you, that the bishop is going to anoint you with chrism. We have become arrogant in what we make people within in the hoops that we make them jump through to receive what ought to be freely given. One of the things that I think is even of greater import now, particularly given it's as though people have come into your little garden and sowed weeds everywhere, right? That are strangling these tiny little shoots that are coming up. More than anything right now, it's true that our children need holiness, but even more importantly, the world needs holy children, because all of us are watching on the internet the rise of the vicious children. We're seeing it very, very clearly. This movement among children to have purity tests. And I mean, by purity tests, I mean, you believe what they believe, not purity as in a virtue, but you believe what they believe, or they will shout you down, or they will threaten you. And so the church has to break herself from this false belief that there's an element of, I don't know, requirement. I mean, like an intellectually incapacitated person. I was thinking about this the other day because, right now we're working on confirmation for our three youngest children. One who is quote unquote the right age according to the church, right? She's in 8th grade. But then I also have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old who I believe, based upon, our life circumstances, are more than mature enough to enter into the sacrament, right? But I have a dear friend of mine whose son is intellectually handicapped. He probably will never mature to a quote unquote level that he would be able to say, I would like to be confirmed, right? He'll never be able to articulate those words. And there's not even an assurity that he will live to be 14. Right? There's no guarantee of that based upon the illness that he's been given. And I think of the wisdom of the Eastern churches that just do chrismation before there's any potential defects known. This initiation of the fullness of the human person is brought into the life of the church. Graces are given. The graces that have been given to the church freely to dispense are freely given, with no with no questions, because there is again that statement that I said before, that God's will goes forth from him and it does not come back fallow, right? And in the garden, I guess, that's the same thing. You don't put back a plant. You don't say nope. You don't pinch back its buds over and over again, saying, "Oh, it's not time for you to grow, little man. I need you to wait until April or whatever." I mean, like you plant it in its appropriate environment, and then you recognize that it has the capacity to do what it ought, because you've already provided the necessary, I don't know, soil, right? I mean, you've put it into the right place, and then you trust that the seed will do what it ought.
That's right. That's right. All right, my friends, in the next episode, I see we have other more ideas on how to nourish this grace from our baptism and in general all of the sacraments we are had opportunity to receive. Till the next time, my friends, Fides et Ratio.